There's a further charge of displaying a prohibited terrorist symbol, and that relates to the ISIS flag he had displayed on the car in which he arrived at the festival site of the massacre in. And he has also been charged with having an explosive device inside his car, which he intended to place near a building.
The surviving alleged gunman of the Bondi Beach attack has been charged in the last few minutes with 59 offences, including 15 counts of murder. Bernard Lagan is in Sydney for The Times and joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do we know about these charges?
So Naveed Akram, who was the surviving shooter from Sunday's massacre, awoke from a coma yesterday, that's Tuesday, and was spoken to by detectives at his Sydney hospital bedside this afternoon. He refused to be interviewed. He had legal aid lawyers. So the police then proceeded to charge him with 15 counts of murder, reflecting the 15 Jewish people who died on Sunday. He was also charged with 40 counts of wounding with intent to murder. There's a further charge of displaying a prohibited terrorist symbol, and that relates to the ISIS flag he had displayed on the car in which he arrived at the festival site of the massacre in. And he has also been charged with having an explosive device inside his car, which he intended to place near a building. Now, the prosecution sought a very long adjournment because of the number of charges he is facing and their complexity. So they have been given till April next year to produce a brief of evidence. So that's likely where the case will remain for now, in abeyance until a court convenes and he appears before a court in April.
I mean, that's a long time for people to wait, but perhaps understandable given the scale of what has gone on here. The other alleged gunman obviously was shot and killed at the scene. Is there any kind of legal repercussions for him in this case?
No. There's he's dead, so can't be charged. There might be some matters arising out of the manner in which he was able to travel to and from Australia, not being a citizen. There may be some transgressions that occurred there on the part of other people. That's the only thing I can think of which might apply to the dead gunman.
And is there any help for the victims? Is there any for the survivors and those families who are now dealing with the aftermath of this? Is there any provision in Australian law for them to get any support? Is there anything sort of, I guess, sort of left behind by the family? Any compensation in that way?
Well, the families are receiving a lot of support from various government agencies, volunteers, welfare organisations. I mean, that's in place, and particularly they're receiving an awful lot of support from the Sydney Jewish community. In terms of monetary compensation, Australia doesn't have anything which is automatically paid to victims in this kind of crime. It is open to the government to make what's called an ex gratia payment to victims of crimes such as this. I haven't seen any discussion about that yet, but that is a possibility that might arise. You can imagine down the track that people will be advocating for that.
There was some suggestion that that Sajid Akram had transferred his $1 million home to his wife in order to prevent the victims from suing for compensation, and that was a sort of a signal really of the planning that had gone into this event. Just finally, Bernard, the funerals are being held. We've seen and we've heard from some of the families that the footage of those funerals. What is the mood there this morning?
Oh yes, well there was the first victim. That funeral was today, and that was for a very well-known Jewish rabbi in Sydney, Rabbi Eli Chandler. He actually helped organise the festival, which it was occurring on Sunday when the gunman struck. He is very well known in the Bondi area. His synagogue is right in the heart of Bondi. His funeral was there, a very, very large crowd, a very, very heavy police presence, and of course the nation's political leaders were there as well. Some former cabinet ministers in the previous Conservative government were there, particularly one, Josh Frydenberg, who is well known in the Jewish community, and he gave a very impassioned press conference before the funeral, in which he accused the Albanese Labor government here of not doing enough to combat anti-Semitism, and saying that they were in dereliction of their duty to the Australian people. So it was a pretty incendiary words from him.
Bernard, thank you so much for taking us through that breaking news there and for giving us the background. And we will cover this story in more detail throughout the programme this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That is Bernard Lagan there in Sydney for The Times.
We heard Paul Abbott making those similar claims on this programme yesterday. Do you know how I feel sorry for? The doctors and nurses in that hospital treating the guy now charged 59 accounts, 15 murders, trying to kill 40 other people. How you treat a person like that, because they're going to have to save his life because he's in a coma. He's just come out of a coma. They're going to have to save that guy's life, and they're going to have to care for him, and they're going to have to make his life better such that he can then be put on trial in April and thereafter. I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to look him in the eye and give him painkillers. I wouldn't be able to give him sort of life-enhancing medicine, ability to breathe more easily. I wouldn't be able to do that. They're going to have to do that. They're going to have to be really professional. That's a hell of a thing to do. This guy has done the worst terrorist attack in Australian history, and look after him for the next 4 months so he can be charged.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, and that hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah.
We need to learn any lessons that are learnt from this, undertake stronger action, undertake any legislative change, undertake any additional powers that are needed across the board to work with the Jewish community. We want to stamp out and eradicate anti-Semitism from our society. We want to also stamp out the evil ideology of what would appear to be, from the investigators, an ISIS-inspired attack. That has no place. That sort of hatred